Welcome to Sorting Myself Out, Coffee with Ryan. We are live. An interesting topic for you today. Is freedom real or is freedom an illusion? It's a loose topic. We can chat. We can just kind of find our way through it, see what happens. And so let me make sure my mic is all set up correctly. Let's see. Yep, I think it's all good. Right on. Welcome to those of you just joining us. We're going to get loosely philosophical, but we're also just going to see where everything takes us. We're going to see where the chat goes. We're going to see what kind of questions come in today. And as many of you know, these live streams are 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time onwards. I do it that way so that there's some predictability and consistency. Now, every once in a while, you all understand that I will have to part from that schedule, but for the most part, I'll stay right on track with that. So if you're just joining, go ahead if you feel like it and write in the chat. Tell me where you're coming from, what's on your mind today, and what do you think about the topic of freedom? Freedom as a principle of both free will, but also of external freedom, freedom within the world, freedom to do different things, freedom to make choices without being imposed upon by other individuals. What do you think about this freedom? Now, there's internal freedom, like I just partially made the distinction, and external freedom. Obviously, internal freedom is kind of lies within our ability to make choices within ourselves. Our feeling of empowerment, our feeling of flexibility, stuff like that. By the way, I hiked a huge mountain yesterday, Mount Katahdin. It's the biggest mountain in Maine. It took all day, and my body is broken from that. I've got some pretty good footage. Unfortunately, Google Hangouts is heading out the door, and so from now on, I'll just have to go live straight up on YouTube. I really prefer to use Hangouts, but they're abandoning me. Grizz, welcome, my friend. Grizz says, I found it. Thought you were standing us up for a minute. Nope, not standing you up. I am here, and I appreciate you joining. Yeah, and like I was saying, every once in a while, I'm going to have to miss these live streams, but this is I'm depending on myself, and you are all depending on me to make it 3 times a week. I'm going to have to drive back across the country by myself with nobody soon, so I probably will miss a couple on that week, but for the most part, this is my routine. But you'll all understand, I hope, if every once in a while I have to miss them. Holidays, events, stuff like that. So, welcome, Mercury. It's good to see you, brother. Mercury's here. Grizz is here. Dan is here. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Oh yeah, Dan, I forgot to tell you that Ken Wilber film that was supposed to release, we had Tim Freak and I decided to delay it. He said that he had some scheduling complications, so that will be released on the 12th, I think. I forget what the exact date is, but I'll set that up. So let's dive in here. We've got a few people here. I've given everyone a few minutes to join, so I think we have enough of a group here to get started. To be honest, I didn't set up a thumbnail really today like I usually do. I'm pretty much beat from that hike. That hike was like being whipped by a mountain. That mountain is intense. And we took up the hardest, or at least it was one of the hardest trails. So it was basically straight rock climbing, bouldering. It wasn't like actual rock climbing with ropes, but we were bouldering up. and it took several hours to get up. And the part up was great because it was mostly just sweating and focusing and, exercising. The part down was hard because it's so hard on my knees. All that pressure that just gets compounded when you're kind of stumbling down a hill. So that was, by the end of the day, my feet were swollen and I could barely walk. But man, those hikes are just so rewarding. Those day long hikes, backpacking, stuff like that. I love that type of stuff. So here it is. This whole idea of freedom. Are we really free? People think of choices as freedom. To be able to have enough choices means you have freedom. Although it's arguable that choices make us less free, because when we have choices, then we are facing existential anxiety, as Kierkegaard so aptly pointed out. And sometimes when we don't have a choice, things are easy because that is all we can do. And so we must accept that is all we can do. When we have choices, we have the anxiety of doing the wrong thing or wanting to do something else, but having to do this and always having the option to bail out. When I was in treatment for my alcoholism, I didn't have choices. I was in a mandatory program. My schedule was set up for me. I had to show up at certain times. Everything was planned for you. Your meals, when you were working out, when you were doing a therapy group, when you were doing schoolwork, everything was, you had to ask to go to the bathroom. Now you could say, well, you had a choice to defile that. Sure, I still had a choice, but my choices were less than normal. I had very limited choices within that framework. I was obliged to the point of force to do certain things. So I had less choices. And within that, there was a lot of freedom because I learned to accept and just do the next thing that was in front of me. At 9 o'clock, I have to do this. At 11 o'clock, I have to do this. This is when we do the gym. This is when we go to therapy groups, blah, 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 blah. And so there was something really nice about that. Now, on the other hand, I was naive at that age, and I thought that it would be so great to be an adult. Like, it would be the best thing in the world. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy my life. It's a great life. But I had mistakenly believed that I would have some illusion of absolute freedom, which just hasn't been the case, because the more choices I have, the more responsibility I have to make the right choices, which is a burden. So that's an interesting thought. Anyways, I'll read some of these comments here. Welcome everyone who's just joining. I'm glad you're here. Let's see. We've got Ryan Houston. Hi, Ryan. I'm Ryan too. It's the last part of the Appalachian Trail. Yes, absolutely. Mount Katahdin is the last part of the AT, and that's one of the cool things about it. Michael says, "What's up? Yo, what's up? Good to see you, Michael. I'm glad you're here." Ryan says, "There is no free will, so I accept it." Right. Yeah, I'm not actually, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there is no free will, although I respect the argument, and I think that there's a lot of good things to be said about that argument, and I think it can be very convincing. I think that there's some mixture between determinism and free will. Obviously, there's no such thing as, in my opinion, absolute free will. I can't absolutely will anything that I want to happen. That would be absurd, right? After all, why do we have bodies? Because we have some limitations. Otherwise, we would just be floating around as energy forms with no limitations whatsoever. So my willpower is confined within the capacities of my mind, my body, and my soul as a mixture, as a conglomeration of a trinity, so to speak, mind, body, and soul. And within that framework, I can exercise my will, but I have to stay within the limitations of that framework. So you could say I am determined to exercise my will within a limited capacity. I believe that, but I do believe I have a lot of choices at any given moment. There's a lot of choices of how to respond to things, and it's not just as simple as the reduction of the firing of synapses within the brain, although that plays a key part in my opinion, because we also have to take in the phenomena of consciousness, and we have not yet been able to locate consciousness within the brain. Now we have some inklings of where conscious reflection comes from. There's prefrontal cortex activity, there's stuff like that, but consciousness as such is still a mystery. Actually, Annika Harris, Sam Harris, his wife, wrote a book called Conscious recently. I'm interested to read that. There was an interview between those two, and I wanna get acquainted with her work. It looks interesting. Oh, okay. So I digress. I'm getting sidetracked from what I really wanted to say. At any given moment, I'm responsible for my own actions, my own thoughts, for the way that I relate to the world. I think that's fundamental. The problem is without free will, without any concept of free will, there's no notion of personal responsibility. Now you could say, well, you're putting the cart before the horse because you're putting your emotional allegiance to the notion of personal responsibility ahead of the truth. And that's a good argument. But I don't think that that's right, because for us to not take personal responsibility is dysfunctional. It would create a totally dysfunctional world. And I believe truth is also a product of functionality. So therefore, things that function well must have something within that system that's true. For example, communism hasn't functioned well. It hasn't succeeded in functioning as a system. So if something is functional, then I think that that is data, that is evidence for what it supports. So if personal responsibility is functional, which a lot of data seems to suggest it's a very functional way of approaching the world, it indicates that there is some semblance of free will, in my opinion. So I think that if I can accept, there's this great thing. It's called the Serenity Prayer. It comes from Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." It's a simple prayer, but it's really powerful because embedded within it is the distinction, the two primary facts of life. There's things we have control over, and there's things we have no fucking control over at all. And I would say things we don't have control over far outweigh things we have control over. But I do have control over parts of myself. Okay, let's read this shit. Boom, 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 boom. Shane, welcome. Thank you for being here. Shane says, "Hey, morning, guys. My body is also in need of recovery." Shane says, "Discipline is freedom." Yes, the Jocko philosophy. I do like that. Discipline is freedom. When you make a commitment and you don't give yourself too many choices, there is a freedom in that. There's a freedom in going all in. There's a freedom in saying, you know what? At 7 a.m. tomorrow, I'm getting my ass out of bed and I'm going to go to the gym or whatever it is that your commitment is. And you don't give yourself any leniency within that. There's a tremendous amount of freedom. No matter how I feel, rain or shine, sick or well, I'm heading over to that gym. There's something about that. Grizz says, "You're free to believe there is no free will." Mercury responds to Grizz and says, but perhaps you have no choice but to believe in the illusion of free will, Grizz. Dan says, I agree. I think it's a bit of both. I am fairly certain it's a bit of both, but I could be wrong because I don't know everything. I only know very little, but that's just what I think. Mercury says, if not, I'm not certain if there is free will, so I try to keep looking at it both ways. I think it's a paralogical thing, like Tim Freak talks about. Tim talks about paralogical. It's both and. It's also paradoxical because a paradox is a beautifully meaningful truth of two things that cancel each other out. So a paradox would be something like, you are the whole ocean in a drop of water. That's a Rumi quote, great Sufi poet. You are the whole ocean in a drop of water. Okay, that's a paradoxical spiritual statement. Now, both of those things contradict each other within the realm of our rational minds. So, the whole ocean is the whole ocean, and the drop of water is the drop of water. So how could you be the whole ocean within a drop of water? Yet, what makes it so profound is it transcends the limitations of the rational confines of reality, and it takes us to this greater third space of being where those things can coexist perfectly well and be a whole truth, a holistic picture. So I would say it wouldn't be too far-fetched to take a paralogical viewpoint, as Tim Freak talks about, and say that you are determined and you are also free. So you could say you're determined to be free, or you're free to be determined. I don't fucking know how the poetic side of that would sound, but all I'm saying is that can't they coexist? Why does it have to be one or the other? Just like the yin yang symbol from Taoism, the feminine and the masculine. One without the other is not really complete. Sure, you can take the Jocko Willink road, which is the hyper masculine road, but then you might become unbalanced if you don't incorporate the wisdom of the feminine into your life. Now, I'm not proposing that Jocko is unbalanced. I don't think so. I don't know him personally. I'm just saying that you can take that path, but if you don't have an antidote to hyper orderliness, just like you need an antidote to chaos, which is why Peterson wrote that book, then we're out of balance. Okay, let's keep reading here. Man, these comments are awesome. I'll keep up. I'll get caught up here. Grizz says, then it's functionally equivalent, Merc. Dan says, same here, Merc. There seems to be such a balance. I think so. Michael says, the ultimate question to play on the Everett hypothesis, why this world? Why not another? And if there is no free will whatsoever, how can you accept there is no free will? Acceptance is a choice. Very good point. Interesting point. Shane says, I think being determined to exercise your free will to the high extent and then you back off of that. Yes, I agree on the function measure. Yes, I think functionality is a good measure. Gloff, welcome, Gloff. Gloff says, freedom ain't free, son. Fat boomers who think they're Jocko Willink. That's funny. But for real, the pre-modern conception of freedom is the alignment of the intellect and the will. And I think that exists absolutely. And Dan says, I agree, Gloff. Wow, you are all writing in some seriously deep shit. That's cool. Jason Lord Surratt, welcome. I haven't seen you in this chat, at least if you haven't changed your username. Welcome. We're glad you're here. You say, depends on how you want to live. If you want to be free, you can. Interesting. And then you go on to say, if you want socks, you need to get them. You are not free anymore. Interesting. Desire rules out freedom. Very interesting. Let me bookmark that in my mind. I got to chew on that for a second. Gloff says, a man has as many masters as he does vices. Yeah. You both make good points there. Griswold Grimm says, "How could you be the whole ocean in a drop of water?" Question mark. Fractal hologram. Yeah. How could you it's almost a rhetorical question that you're asking. It seems like purposely so, but I would just say, see how far you can stretch your mind, everyone, to the extent of that metaphor. Okay, so I'll just give you a hint if it wasn't already obvious to you, which I'm sure it is to some of you. You are the whole universe, and a human being would be the equivalent of that statement. Dan says, Rumi's poetry is wonderful. Absolutely. CGH, CGH Longstone, welcome. There is no free will. We're automations. Free will isn't unbounded. We exercise will within constraints. Yes, but that doesn't mean that there's no free will. Constraints are obviously in place. I mean, we do not have absolute free will, as previously stated, but we do seem to have some potential to exercise our attention. Okay, so just right now, place your attention on a sound outside of the building, or place your attention on something else that you decide to place your attention on. You can all of a sudden become more aware of your feet or your hands, or certain thoughts can come to the foreground while others go into the background. And if you just pay close attention to that process, you see that there is some ability to move your focus intentionally. Now, you could argue that that intention is not your intention, really. It's just the result of a further automated process that you are not in control of. But that is eventually circular reasoning. So the circular reasoning is, it is this way because it has to be this way because it couldn't be any other way, and it continues to go on and on and on. I have no free will because everything I think is my free will is actually determined. But that ability to reason circularly doesn't necessarily credit the argument with some sort of authority. I mean, we could take that argument all the way down to the bottom for the Big Bang. Everything's been the billiard ball effect since the Big Bang. One ball hits another, and then inevitably things are just a mathematical equation going on and on and on. But I just don't. I think that the universe is creative. I think the universe has consciousness. I'm not saying that it's like a human mind or a human brain, but obviously there's a creative element to being alive. There's a creative element to what the universe is creating. Let's just put it that way. There's something almost, I don't know. I like the word spiritual, even though it's kind of taboo. There's something about it to me that isn't just determinism. I think there's a proactive force within each of us and within the universe that is experimenting and creating and accommodating situations. That's just my opinion. And I know this topic it can get a little heated. I don't actually know why it can get heated, because it seems like there's nothing political about it. There's nothing like, it's not that, maybe it's a really deeply personal topic. Maybe people feel personally attached to the idea. But I just want you all to know right off the bat that I'm willing to change my mind if I'm presented with better evidence, or if somebody convinces me that there is no such thing as free will. I would have a very hard time parting with it, though, because it's such a fundamental viewpoint of how I view sorting ourselves out. It is choice, personal responsibility, choice. Not identifying as a victim, identifying as a creative spirit that can make order out of chaos, like Jordan Peterson talks about. I think the ability to make choices is essential. Michael says, discipline is the art of making a choice. Are you familiar with Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin? No, I'm not. That sounds like a great. Is that a book? It sounds like a great book. Also, how are we free to a possibility when you don't know such possibilities exist? But is the existence thereof free within the constraints? Says Grizz. Gloff says, dude, Ryan, we have way too much femininity these days. We don't need more. It depends on how you define femininity, Gloff, because you could argue that what you're perceiving as femininity isn't really that. And I don't necessarily think that we should pathologize masculine and feminine. I think they're just aspects of reality that can get out of balance just like anything. So for me, it's not that there's anything wrong with femininity or masculinity. They're just both expressions of humans and the way that we see the world. And you could say that they're primary polarities. One's not complete without the other. It's like an alchemical marriage of opposites, the union of opposites, as Carl Jung wrote about often. So I don't think that we should ever say, personally, for me, that we don't need this or that because it's too individualized. That's making a group identity statement, Gloff, based on everybody. So it's not we don't need more femininity. You could say I don't need more femininity because you're speaking for yourself as a human being who's sorting themselves out. But how do you know somebody in this chat doesn't need that? We don't. So we should look at it as individuals, not groups. Although I see where you're coming from because the movement of what people are calling third wave feminism, SJW culture, things like that is so concerning that I would see where you would draw those conclusions. Victim culture, people treating themselves as a victim, the devouring mother complex, stuff like that. So people who aren't leaving their parents' house and sorting themselves out, they're not getting out of, like the Abrahamic story that Jordan Peterson talks about as a metaphor, they're not pushing themselves to grow. There's a lot of reasons in society we need more masculinity. I can see where you're coming from with that. I just think we need to be careful about generalizing too much. Okay, so Dan says, right there with you, Ryan. Right on. CGH, back to the idea of Crawley and the esoteric idea of will. True will is consistent in alignment with divine will. And says, at Grizz, free with bounds. Yes, there is an ego attachment to unfettered. That's a fascinating idea. Dan says, well, unfortunately, femininity that we're largely seeing in the modern world is shadow. I know what you mean, though, Gloff. Yeah, I think that might be easy to conflate with one another. Michael says, satirical observation. Free will exists only for the elite and determinism for the rest of us plebs. It's like communism. The party never lies. Grizz says, the lack of free will can be used as a get out of responsibility free card, and people don't like those being tampered with. Yeah, that's for sure. Gloff says, agreed, Dan, but we need masculinity right now. And I think, Gloff, to that point, I think Peterson brought in a lot of that. And I think that's been fantastic, what he's brought in, as well as now other teachers like Jocko. I think Rogan does a pretty good job bringing that. I think that there's a lot of teachers out there right now bringing that masculine intensity that's helping people sort themselves out, get organized, show up, take responsibility, push yourself to your limits, carry a load, all that stuff I think is important. I know it's important for me. I need that energy in my life. It's essential. So I think that's a good observation. Michael says, plus, why is choice the first thing we learn in therapy? Be it Jungian, CBT, because choice is essential in therapy. I mean, that's like primary in my training, is that people have a choice. That once they are confronted with the possibilities within their psyche and the way that they've been relating, once you're aware of it, you have choices. So if we're aware of a problem, right, we're no longer in unconscious paradise like Frodo and the Shire. We know the ring exists. We know the ring is a problem. Frodo had a choice to stay, and he had a choice to leave, and he chose to leave. He made that choice on the basis of his free will. Before he was aware that the ring was in the Shire and that was the one ring of power, the evil ring, he didn't have a choice because he wasn't aware of it. So awareness creates possibilities of choice. So in therapy, when you're aware of a problem in your relationship, when you're aware of a problem in your mind, when you're aware of an attitude or a belief system that's no longer serving you, then you start to have choices. And that's what therapy is about, is creating a landscape of possibilities in which you can navigate competently and create order out of that, something that works in your life. Without the premise that you're the one making choices, the therapy would be a dud because it disempowers the client in their ability to move within the world as an agent of will, as a human being who can take the hero's journey. So that's fundamental. Those premises are fundamental to growth, is the idea that we're doing something, that we're proactively interacting with life. Okay. Let's see. Gloff says, agreed, Dan, but we need masculinity right now. Michael says, I already read that one. Michael says, Organized Mind is a book I picked up recently at work. Leviton also did a good job, book on music and neurology as well. CGH says, first and foremost, we need less infantilization. Yeah, that would be good. Griswold Grimm says, being needy is too feminine, Gloff, suck it up. Andrew Penny, welcome, Andrew. Glad you're here. I think we just got better at predicting human actions. We aren't even that good at it. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Gloff says, nothing feminine about feminism. Yeah, well, that's the devouring mother is the archetype of unbalanced third wave feminism, right? The mother that consumes her children. That's why postmodernism has a tendency to eat itself. It doesn't have a logic that can support itself. It just collapses in on itself. That's the devouring mother. However, we need to be very aware, in my opinion, of the benevolent mother, the nurturing mother. Just like when you go out into nature, okay, when you go, like I went on a hike yesterday, nature can devour me and destroy me. Nature is powerful. Nature is horrifying. Nature is untamed, raw, elemental, primordial energy. But nature is also beautiful. Nature also cleanses my mind. Nature gives me the spirit and the inspiration I need to be psychologically healthy. So it can devour me and it can save me. Same thing with feminine energy. So if I over-nurture myself, I risk becoming weak. If I under-nurture myself, I risk becoming a tyrant, becoming rigid, stagnant, stale, and breaking under my rigidity. There's that ancient Chinese proverb, something like that. It's cliche, so I don't know exactly where it comes from, but a reed can bend in the wind. Something along those lines. Whereas to a stiff tree might break in the wind, might snap. It's important to have that element of flexibility within our psyche. Okay, gotta keep reading here. Mercury says, I love the divine feminine. Dan says, me too. A closer look at divine masculine would be a great show. I would love to talk more about that. Gloff is talking about how feminism is not actual feminine, is not actually feminine. And Dan says, I hear you, Gloff. It's actually very anti-feminine. Sally, welcome. HG Tudor says, I am a narcissist. All right. That's okay. Griswold Grimm says, Merc says divine feminine and Sally shows up. Coincidence? Hey, there you go. Dan says, morning, Sally. Merc says, morning, Sally. And Dan says, boom, well said, Grizz. Gloff says, morning, Sally. HG says, I am a monster. Are you talking like in the Petersonian sense? Like you're a monster and you know you're a monster so you can integrate it? Is that what you mean? Or are you just telling us how many bad things you think about yourself? Why? Levi Prout says, why did the housewife go to the toilet? She was desperate. Sally says, I seriously think the whole world needs a black cup of masculinity. Coddling people are bubble wrapping over the AC vents over this point. Yeah, we do need to toughen up especially as young people who don't know the difficulties of life, who don't know, we don't understand the thousands of years of evolution and survival and struggle that human beings have gone through in order to live in a comfortable, air-conditioned society with refrigeration and electricity and potable drinking water at our disposal instantly. Yes, I agree. We need to have some appreciation for toughening up wouldn't be a bad thing. We could use a little toughening up. I'm with you and Gloff on that point. Absolutely. HG Tudor says, I've been out practicing my UFC movement today, Conor McGregor style. So you're a monster, a narcissistic monster who's practicing UFC. Stay out of his way, everyone. He's this dangerous human being right there. Okay, Michael says, modern feminism is both devouring mother and tyrannical father. Destroy Western society, patriarchy, which offers a certain degree of social mobility, and replace it with rigid totalitarian structure. Yes, it's kind of both out of balance, isn't it? That's a great observation. Sal says, yeah, maybe some wild, indomitable housewives might be good to force people to sit down to some damn dinner rolls. My two best Dakota buds never and me all ended up being housewives. Dan says, no more Joey Coco Diaz. Need more Joey Coco Diaz in the world. Shade says, I think that we need. HG says, LOL, and then smiles down low. Michael says, Sally, I once made up a piano student of mine do 20 push-ups for complaining. Nice. Sal says, daycare children are not adulting well people to raise their own kids to save the world. HG Tudor, smiley face. Michael says, hallelujah. Well, okay, let's look at it this way. We have willpower, we have masculine, We have structure, work ethic, toughness, grit, focus. And then over here we have surrender, intuition, nurturance, flow, openness, creativity, love. If you want to try to tell me that you don't need both of those things, I'd be interested to hear why. Now, the sacred combination comes at a pivotal point, ladies and gentlemen. And this pivotal point is the point at which both energies unify at maximum capacity. So if you focus on ordering yourself and working and really grinding and push yourself, and then you surrender at the point of maximum effort, that's a profound experience. It can be a mystical experience because that's actually the alchemical union of the feminine and masculine as such within your psyche. So the balancing act, I would say, for me, and I'm speaking generally, but also speaking from my own experience. I don't know what's right for everybody else, okay? I'm making my own way through these truths and trying to figure it out. But it seems to me that after I push myself, if I can get into a state of surrender, either as I'm doing it or after I'm done doing it, then there is something just magnificent about that experience. In meditation, for example, for those of you who have ever tried meditation, there's very rigid techniques that are very masculine that you get started with. There's focal points, there's breathing exercises, there's mental exercises, there's visualizations, and they involve discipline. They involve going through a series of steps that you have to stick to and really embody that masculine energy. But after a while, once you get the structure down, there's a flow state that's very feminine energy that takes over. And then it's just happening. There's this phrase in Taoism called Wu Wei. And Wu Wei means effortless action. Well, I believe that when the mother and the father, alchemically and archetypally speaking, unify, it creates effortless action. It's the unity of the Tao. It's like a marathon runner. Many marathon runners report after several miles of running, they are not running anymore. They are watching running happen. They have reached such a strange conscious phenomena that running is now happening to them. I'm sure that you've heard Peterson talk about those states of being. My guess is that when he's delivering one of his best lectures, the lecture is coming through him. He's not forcing the lecture or tyrannically confining it or constraining it. He's allowing the lecture to take a beautiful shape and bloom like a flower within him. Now, what did it take to build up to that point? Well, he had to prepare the soil. He had to spend many a hot day shoveling and gardening and tending to the places of his psyche so that he could reach a state of profound unity and deliver his best work. The best musicians report this phenomena as well. As when they give their best performance, the performance is happening through them. Now, these are all things that are possible for us to experience as human beings. I would dare say that this is an aim that we should aim towards, a profound religious or spiritual experience in which we can fully let go and allow things to happen. I just don't think you would get to that point if you only took feminine or masculine and only focused on one side of the spectrum. I don't think you would get to that profound experience. I'm going to read the comments now. Sal says, daycare children are not adulting well. People need to raise their own kids to basically save the world. Grizz says, what's the secret for unraised children to figure out how to raise their children? Well, Dr. Strachan would say, first you have to re-raise yourself. You have to re-raise your own inner child. And once you do that, then you'll be presented with the proper way of parenting. Merck says, perhaps we need precisely the problems we are presented with. I love that. That's a beautiful statement. Sal says, sorry for the typos, Ryan. I'll do better when I'm back in Florida off the cell phone. No worries. Levi says, I reckon flow is like Tony Hawk special meter. I even think that it's a thing metaphorically when I skate. Special meter, momentum. Absolutely. I actually understand what you're saying. Chris says, might want a spoiler alert statements like that, Merc. That's funny. Dan says, Merc, I'm of a similar mind. Making it past all of this will make for a stronger humanity. Sal said, Grimm, that's a good damn question. But I kind of think anyone who wants to can do better, can do way better. Tons of literature on different strategies. Baby Wise is a good series. The free range kids movement is good. Sal says, I had a good rural community, but even with their example, I want to do better. That's great. CGH says, Merc, I have a piece on that. Life keeps throwing lessons at you. The ones that you're avoiding get thrown harder. Yeah, and CGH, I'd like to promote your blog on our Discord. We have a content creators channel. I don't know if you ever use Discord, but if you hop on our Sorting Myself Out Discord and share it in the creative community, I'd love that. I'd love for everybody to see what you're working on because I think it's a good project. Dan says, Ryan, right there with you at Wu Wei. Cool. Sal says, we all need to be Renaissance men to gain the wisdom to wield the power of technology we now have. Colton, my brother, has been really into Renaissance, being a Renaissance man. So he's been talking about that actually a lot. I'd love to get him back on here to talk about all the implications of that. Merck says, and they can hit really fucking hard, CGH Longstone. Yes, those life lessons you're talking about. Dan says, here to Sally. And Merck says, Sal, did you see Rogan's recent podcast with Eric Weinstein? Grizz says, the flow state thing sounds an awful lot like chiseling yourself into an instrument of channeling. Yes, it is kind of like that, Grizz. I think that's right. And then CGH says, I'll get Discord installed. And then Grizz, thanks for sharing the Discord link. Gloff says, how is he a Renaissance man? I didn't say he was a Renaissance man. I said he was talking a lot about being one. I don't think he says he is. I think he says he wants to get to the point where he is one, so that he can, he wants to learn a lot of different things, and he's on his way. Let's just put it that way. He's on his way to gathering the knowledge, the wisdom, and the experiences. Obviously a Renaissance man is somebody who's very well cultured, very well read, does many different things, is competent in many different areas, is well educated, things like that. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that in order to really reach that point, you're talking about years and years and years of experience. So I think it's more of a goal than a proclamation. Sal says, tell Colton I want I want electric renaissance to be a thing. That's a cool idea. Transhumanist renaissance man, says Gloff. Transhumanist renaissance man. That's kind of that's a cool phrase, Gloff. I like that. Yeah. And to be honest, everyone, I guess I should give you a more personal check-in. It's been a rough couple days. My mom's super sick. She was in the hospital all last night, and we're all really worried about her. And the doctors think she has a really bad UTI infection, but she's in I've never seen her in this much pain. Like she's barely can move, and we're all really worried about her because it's been days. And I'm in a bit of a testy mood. So if I seem a little off, that's probably why. But anyways, the reason I wanted to share is not for my own pity, but any prayers or thoughts or anything of that sort, because we're just really unclear about what's wrong. And I'm not sure if the doctor got the diagnosis right or not. We're trying to figure that out. But it seems like an awful lot of pain for that. But then I guess I heard that UTIs can be really bad, so I'm not sure. I've never seen her like this before. So yeah, if you're a praying person, it would be much appreciated. If not, then don't worry about that. Thank you. I see your comments coming in. And also just want you all to know, one of the things that we can also use our Discord for is anytime somebody's going through a hard time and wants some sort of thoughts or prayers or support. I believe in the power of prayer personally. That's just me. I've seen miracles happen because of prayer, and that's just maybe it's a delusion, maybe it's not real, but to me it feels real. And so if you want to join our Discord community, and if there's something going on in your family where someone's sick or you're having a crisis and you just need that extra set of hands and hearts thinking about you, then I think that would be one really powerful way for this community to support each other. And I think everybody should have the ability to have a group of people thinking about them and praying for them. So Sal says, I did see the Eric and Rogan thing. I'm disappointed in Eric's ability to understand people who are for Trump. Eric didn't seem to trust regular people. It's sad to me. Oh my God, you know what I watched recently? I watched last night David Letterman's interview with Kanye West on Netflix. And one of the things he talked about Kanye, which is such an interesting person. I can't figure him out, but he's obviously very creative. He talked about his experiences with bipolar, and I thought that was fascinating. And I think Mercury would be great to watch that and respond that. I don't know if you have Netflix Mercury, but if you can get a hold of the David Letterman Kanye West interview, it's about a 30-minute episode, and there's a good chunk in there where he talks about bipolar, but he also talks about a lot of other things. So it's just interesting to get behind the curtain in that guy's mind. He's an interesting character. Gloff says, saying a prayer for your mom. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Sal says, sorry, Ryan. Thanks for letting us know. Thank you, Sal. Michael says, I'd say Peterson in his lectures is a renaissance man. Absolutely. Dude talks about Bukowski, Alberta oil fields, biker gangs, Nietzsche. Yeah, he's not only a renaissance man, but he's a fucking expert psychologist. Like, refined as can be. Like, just precise in his abilities with that. So that's one of the reasons I love him, because my interest in psychology has always been so strong. Dan says, she'll be in my prayers, Ryan. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Michael says, sorry about your mom, dude. Thank you. I think she'll be okay. It's just concerning when somebody's in that much pain and you don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Merck says, love and prayers to your mom, you and your family. Spartacus says, "Oh, that's rough. Hope she gets better. I'm a praying person." Thank you very much. You're all really sweet, and it really means a lot to me. Michael, I'd agree. It could be Rogan is too. What a beautiful idea, Ryan, says Dan. Yeah, I think it is important that we can support each other. So don't hesitate to reach out. Sal says, Michael, I'd agree. It could be Rogan is too. Oh, yeah. The reason I thought of the Kanye interview is because, obviously he's come out as a Trump supporter. So I was responding to that, Sal. Coming from another side, Sally says. Not sure what you mean by that. Michael says Joe's great too. Mercury says Angelina could use some prayers right now too. Yes, absolutely. Send Angelina your prayers. Dan says we'll pray for her too, Merc says I don't have Netflix, but I'll see if I can see that. Yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's if nothing else, just keeping an eye on Kanye West, seeing what he's up to. I think he clearly has some sort of creative genius. Now, it's not clear to me how much of it is wisdom, but I do see some wisdom in his creative genius. And he's an interesting public figure, that's for certain. Okay. I got through the comments. Yeah, meta meditation. McFace says, have you tried meta meditation? That's a really powerful one. I haven't done that since this has been going on with my mom. But yes, I went to my university, my undergrad, we studied Buddhism a lot. There was a lot of Buddhist religious studies and so forth. And we did learn about all these techniques. And I've been practicing meditation for several years. So a meta meditation would be fantastic. Although there's different traditions of meta, so depends on which tradition you're thinking of. Anyways, oops, did I lose the chat here? Sorry, hold on. Oh, there we go. My bad. Spartacus says, thepiratebay.org, a pirate's life for me. Grizz says, what's meta meditation? Well, essentially it's kind of like a loving kindness practice where you expand love from the one I learned, and maybe McFace is talking about a different one. I'll look it up right now to see how many different kinds there are. But you basically you keep sending out positive energy from your heart. It's kind of a visualization, I would say. And if I remember correctly, because it's been a few years since I did a meta, you continue, there's a few statements or like mantras that you say while you're doing it. And I believe you like send love to yourself and to others, and even maybe like people you're angry with or resentful at, and you like keep spreading it out until it goes over the whole world. Let's see. I could have that wrong though, since it's been so long. It's not like the main technique that I've practiced over the years. It's just one of the ones I've tried. Okay, yep. A meta meditation is the simple practice of directing well wishes towards other people. Yeah, so it's basically a mindful thinking practice where you're mindfully directing your positive energy towards others. But there's different techniques that I've tried. Anyways. McFace says, it's loving kindness and self-compassion. It's about getting out of your head and into your heart. It sounds sappy, but I'm super cynical and I love it. Well, absolutely. I love that you're sharing that. I think meditation is really underrated, to be honest. It's such a powerful, all different techniques that can be used, but just as a general idea and practice, it's so powerful. Danny says, it sounds like Tibetan Tonglen. I think Tonglen is similar but different because I think you are taking in the darkness, if I remember from Pema Chodron's teaching, transmuting it to light. So I think Tonglen's a little more advanced and serious because you're literally voluntarily taking in darkness and imagistically, let's just say for now, metaphorically, but, it could be real metaphysically as well. You transmute it within yourself and then you breathe it back out. That's like the ultimate bodhisattva. The bodhisattva is the one who reaches enlightenment and has the ability to live out nirvana and experience absolute bliss for all of eternity, but they instead decide to forgo their own enlightenment because they want to ensure that the enlightenment of all human beings is possible before they enter into their own bliss fully. Obviously, they still have it, but they don't fully allow themselves to let go. So they turn back towards the world. And in that turning back towards the world, they serve others. And their goal is to help everyone reach enlightenment. And that's the bodhisattva path, essentially. All right. Michael says, I don't know how much yay is for Trump, but I love that he shows blacks and the people at large that they have other options. Anyway, I do like his music and lyrics and do genuinely like the Yeezy 350s. Yeah, he's a good artist. Michael says, I'll watch the Letterman Kanye interview when I get the chance. God, the one thing that pissed me off in that interview is like Letterman would interrupt him like when he was going on a thought. Like he was going on a really great rant about something, and then Letterman would push his Netflix agenda on him, and then it just seemed like he was trying to keep Kanye tame or something. It was really annoying. I mean, I would have liked him to be able to. That's why I hope he goes on Rogan, because if he goes on Rogan, Rogan won't do that to people. Rogan doesn't sometimes he does push an agenda, but he tends to. I think Rogan's the best interviewer of all time because he just lets people explore ideas. Although I got really frustrated with Rogan the other day in the conversation he had with Weinstein on IQ, because Weinstein was going down this very specific idea about how intelligence is global, which Strachan has been teaching me for years, which basically means that IQ is only one measurement of intelligence, but there's other measurements that we're still not fully apprehending. And because of that, we're making mistakes in our judgment of what the true implications of IQ are. But they took it down the race road instead. And I just feel like I was so excited. I was like, okay, keep going down this train of thought of the fucking idea of global intelligence. Like, what is intelligence? Like, that's the fucking question. Like, what is intelligence? How many different kinds of intelligence are there? How many kinds of intelligence are measured by IQ? And how many kinds of intelligence are missing within the IQ tests? But the goddamn Rogan experience derailed the conversation from where I wanted it to go. It was really unfortunate for me, because I've been thinking about this for fucking years. When you think about something all the time and you chew on it and you chew on it, and then finally somebody of public importance and that you respect starts talking about it, and then it gets derailed. I'm sure that's happened to all of you with podcasts. I'm sure I do it to you sometimes. It's like, God damn it. Ryan just started fucking talking about something really interesting, and then he went off the rails. So my heart goes out to you because I hate that feeling. It's the worst fucking feeling. Mercury says, I love that McFace. Yeah, I love that too. The explanation of meditation. Sally says, prayer done right is meditation. I agree with that statement. That's a profound statement. Dan says, that's a practice I really appreciate. McFace says, download the Dharma Seed app on the App Store or find the website. They have thousands of guided meditations by real monks. That's right, Ryan. Yeah, I know what you mean. That's right, Ryan. Yeah, I was talking about the Tonglen practice. By the way, I don't think most of you know this about me, but I've spent, like I said, in my undergraduate and other trainings, I've spent a lot of time studying Eastern traditions, like specifically yoga and meditation practices that are designed to reach what people call enlightenment or create spiritual experiences or whatever the hell you want to call it. And that's just something I haven't really covered very much on this channel, but it's definitely a part of my education. So if you ever want to chat about those like we are today, I know that I focus a lot on the Western Petersonian side of things, but there's definitely an Eastern side to my personality that is more philosophical in terms of meditation and prayer and the soul and stuff like that. All right. Sally says, Kanye said in some interview, oops, I'm skipped a couple. Spartacus says, I like the Indra's net concept personally. Yes, Indra's net is a beautiful concept. I've done a little bit of reading on Indra's net, but it's essentially the web of life that just extends. It's like I think there's like, in the visual, there's like thousands of diamonds within the web of life, and they're all reflecting back onto each other, and it expands throughout the universe. There's a really good passage in a book called Waking Up to What You Do about Indra's net. Let's see. Indra's net. Oh, there's an Alan Watts talk on Indra's net. I love Alan Watts. Let's listen for a second. Okay? We're going to listen to a little bit of Alan Watts together. Let me crank this speaker up. Alan Watts, the man.
From noticing all the particular things and being baffled by their multiplicity and dealing with the multiplicity of things. But as you go into this, you discover, as you understand things, what do you mean when you understand things? It means you become aware of their relationships to each other, and eventually you see the unity behind them. And it is as if the multiplicity of the world dissolved into unity. And so here you encounter a problem. I can see the world as a unity. I can see the world as a multiplicity. But how the devil am I going to put the two visions together?
Okay, that's what we were talking about earlier. Paradox, multiplicity, and unity. Okay, so how do those two truths reconcile? They're two truths that cancel each other out. So in Eastern spirituality, you find these all over the place. They're called paradoxes, where two profound truths contradict one another, but somehow make a greater whole.
If I am to be a practical success in business, in family life, and so on, I have to observe the world as particulars. It's particulars that matter. I have to know chalk from cheese. But if I become a saint, a monk, or a hermit, then or even perhaps a poet or an artist, I will forget about the practical matters and contemplate the unity, the secret meaning underlying all events.
When is he going to talk about Indra's net? Let's see if I can find that.
Tired of it. Then on the other hand, there are people who are purely spiritual.
God damn it. You know what? I'm going to find
This means then suddenly he has disappeared.
I'm going to find the exact place where he talks about it after this, and maybe we'll do a video on it sometime. But here's the link in case you want to watch it after we do this or whenever you want. Looks like there is a Wikipedia on Indra's Net, so maybe we can check that out. Okay. All right. Indra's Net. We'll look it up one more time because I think it's a great thing to explore. Yep. So it's also called jewels, or Indra's pearls, is a metaphor used to illustrate the concepts of sunyata, emptiness, pratya samutpada, dependent origination, and interpretation in Buddhist philosophy. All right. Well, it bears more exploration in another podcast, I think. Okay. Let me read some more comments here. I feel like shit today after that hike all day. My body's just fucking wrecked. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. My girlfriend and I have this joke. So you know the term unsung hero? Like he's an unsung hero. Like he does everything and then he's quiet about it. But we have this joke in our relationship that I'm a sung hero because I'll do all these nice things for her and then I'll just like make a big deal. Like, did you see how I did the dishes? Did you see how I folded the blankets? Oh, did you see how I did this? I do that sometimes. It's not a good habit. I'm trying to work on it. I don't do it with other people, but I do it with her because I especially want her to notice things. And so we have a running joke where she calls me a sung hero. Yeah, it's weird because I really only do that with her. I don't tend to do that with like other people where I, verbalize things that I had done too much. I don't know why. We should do a psychological analysis of why it is I do that. It's probably because I really want to make sure she loves me. I want to make sure she knows that I'm doing things for her so she'll love me. My guess, my best guess. Okay, where's the comments we're looking for here? I'm going to skip down a little bit because I'm having a hard time keeping up, but this is the one that stuck out to me. Just get Kanye on here and show Letterman up by doing a better interview with him yourself. That's great. That would be awesome to talk to Mr. West. Spartacus Anon says the best kind of intelligence equals the satisfied mind. Sal says in the Ryan experience you can ask him. Absolutely. Grizz says channeled stuff I'm into speaks of intelligent infinity. So that's a concept that exists for me. Wow. Beautiful. Adela, darling. Welcome, Adela. We're glad you're here. And she also says Merc LOL. Michael says both brands and postures are a form of propriety. What's stopping farmers from having branded pastures? Brands are nothing more than collective trust. If people trust in the produce of your land, why not brand your land and capitalize on that trust? That's a really good point. I like that thinking. Dan says that'd be very cool, Ryan. Probably talking about exploring Eastern thought. Sal says, we all literally have cattle brands. It's a deal where I live, but a person without land is just a cowboy, and certain people will almost not talk about them, or families like my immediate doesn't have enough for it to provide enough to live on. HG Tudor says, aye, Captain. Sal says, Sally Joe M. Cooper. Or sorry. My mind is just not really here when I say Sal says and then I read their username when I already said Sal says. Brain fog is real, man. Complicated rancher politics. Dan says, I'm an Eastern mind nerd, though I love and include Western and modern thought heavily in my life. Yeah, well, I remember, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I remember you talking about how you used to work with Ken Wilber pretty closely, and you spent a lot of time helping him with things. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Spartacus says there's a quote. Oh, I already read that quote on Wikipedia. And then McFace says, what's your opinion on tarot? Well, I don't know. It's such a mystery to me. See, Andrew's really into tarot card readings. And let's see if he's awake right now. Maybe he can give us some information on tarot. Because Andrew Jokum, obviously, is who I'm talking about, the one who gave us this channel. Well, it reminds me of astrology, these divinations, these ways of making meaning. Here's how I make sense of it. Tarot, carrot. Am I pronouncing it wrong? Tarot? How do you pronounce it? See, I'm not very educated in this realm. Tarot? Is that it? Spell it out for me. Tarot. Anyways, here's how I think of it. So it's quite possible that we intuitively understand which cards we're drawing. And so that through that intuition, we're able unconsciously to pick up cards that we know are going to be meaningfully useful to us to help us solve the mysteries of our own psyche. And so in that way, I believe that they can provide useful metaphors for experiences. The question is, are you able to buy into the belief that we have those intuitive capacities? Well, here's a way to bridge it. And this is really interesting. One of the things that modern day neuroscientists have figured out is our brain is processing 10 billion bits of information per second. Only so much of that information we're consciously attending to. So less than, I think it's less than 2% of that information that we're always processing are we aware of, conscious of. So that means we're constantly gathering information from our environment and from body language. Within our thoughts, we're always gathering information. We're just only using our prefrontal cortex to be aware of so much of it. So if that's the case, we don't really know what we're capable of. We don't really know where our intuitions come from. We don't really know how much information is seeping into our subconscious at any given moment. So to me, it would make sense that you could close your eyes and somehow, because of your powerful processing abilities as a brain, be able to draw cards that would give your brain the best clues for your situation so that your mind could start to chew on them. So that's the only way I've been able to make sense of it scientifically. Now, perhaps it's just a purely spiritual phenomena, and somehow the angels or the guides or the fairies or whatever it is that you're drawing from make your hand pick up the right card. I don't know. I mean, or it could all be bullshit. It could be just complete hogwash. It could just maybe there's no validity to it at all, and we're just making meaning out of randomness because that's what brains do. We like to make meaning out of things. But even if we were just making meaning up, those meanings can still be useful meanings. If we make up a metaphor about a card that we drew, or there's a way that it relates to our life, perhaps it's very meaningful to make up meanings. And helpful, perhaps it's very helpful to make up those meanings and will assist us in our life. So if it's useful, then I think you should do it. I don't know. I'm not an expert in the area whatsoever. Andrew's not responding, so I don't think he's around, but it would be nice to to hear what he thinks about that. So I guess it's tarot. Okay, got it. Tarot. Oh, tarot. Okay, I gotcha. I still think it's funny that Grizz said I never saw someone pronounce tarot like carrot. Spartacus says Alejandro Jodorowsky is a trippy man. He's into tarot. I think I'm getting it. I view them as a map of archetypes. Well, there's certainly that. That's what Grizz says. I view them as a map. There's certainly a map of archetypes. They provide images that are ancient. They're potentially universal within the psyche. So there's no doubt in my mind that they're powerful symbols. Absolutely. The question is, are you coordinating are you subconsciously or through some spiritual mechanism coordinating your psyche with the drawing of the cards, creating some synchronicity? I think I think that's certainly possible. That you could be creating a synchronicity through those drawings. Dan says, I'm subscribed to him, an interesting fellow, talking about Alejandro. Levi says, I reckon anxiety and paranoia might just be a primitive psychic abilities. That's interesting. Wow, I'd have to think about that for a while. Okay. Michael says, I have this thing called randomness self-therapy. If I'm in a rut, I do an I Ching or tarot and free associate from the results. That's great. That definitely give you a way to start getting some psychological momentum so that you can create a new path forward. Dan says, same here, Grizz. Sal says, weird type of sense. Michael says, think equals thing. Oh, you're correcting your past. That's all right. McFace says it's like tarot. Oh, okay. Tarot. So tarot card. I guess I'll pronounce it that way. I don't fucking know, guys. Maybe I'll just pronounce it like tarot just to make you laugh. Doing a tarot reading. Spartacus says paranoia is nice. It also would get us killed in the wild. What do you think about the stoned ape theory? I'm going to look that up. I don't know if I'm familiar. Stoned ape theory. Oh, psilocybin mushrooms were the evolutionary catalyst from which language, projective imagination. Joe Rogan's picture is like one of the first things that pop up. Religion, philosophy, and science. McKenna's hypothesis concerning the influence of psilocybin mushrooms. Yeah, well, it's certainly possible, as Rogan would say. No, it's entirely possible. Oh God. I don't know what I think about that, because if that would be the case, then, well, the idea that psilocybin could be the evolutionary catalyst for consciousness that grew, then you'd have to assume that we developed a prefrontal cortex because of psilocybin, and we'd be having to take a lot of psilocybin to drive that evolutionary current, don't you think? Like hundreds of people would have to continue taking psilocybin. You wouldn't just take it a couple times and then it would just drive evolution. Wouldn't it have to be kind of repetitive? Spartacus says, oh, I just read that one. So I don't know. The answer to that question is I don't know.
That's Terrence McKenna, huh?
Hey, yeah. I'm on a live stream right now. What are you up to?
I'm headed out.
Are you sure you don't want to come chat for a second?
Yeah.
Are you heading out for good? Oh, I gotta say goodbye to my uncle. He's leaving. I'll talk to you all on Wednesday. All right. See ya. I'm doing my weekly live stream.